Good morning, everybody, or hello, and welcome to Shane and Todd's Cloudy Podcast number 424, recorded live February 27th, 2019. And I am your host, and all by my lonesome, Todd Clint. Shane was busy today. He's off teaching a class, amazing people with the wow and the wonders of Power Apps and Flow. And so he is not here today. Mark also was too busy to hang out with me. Even Lori's not here. She's got important stuff going on. So it's just me, just you. So the good news about all this, besides the fact that there's no Shane, which is probably the best news of all, is that it will probably be shorter because Shane won't get off on all of his tangents that neither one of us really care about. So this will be a good podcast. And it's funny, this being podcast 424, Shane and I have been looking up on the HTTP codes, response codes. 424 is failed dependency, and I find that very apt. I depend on Shane, and well, he's failed me. Mark Chrisman in the chat room saying he's not too busy. I should have brought him on. The problem with that, if I bring Mark on, is I'll probably like him way better than Shane, and then it'll be, Shane will be out of a job. So we'll have to see. I see Mark's working on some PowerShell stuff. Him and I might have to chat. I've been doing a lot of that stuff lately. On to our production notes. First, I have to give a shout out to the folks at SISKit. If you're watching the video version of this, I still have the slightly askew, mostly shadowed SISKit logo in the background. They're putting out some great stuff. If you haven't already done it, go out to SISKit.com. And if you're on-prem SharePoint, they've got some great products for you, SP.kit and all that. If you are online, they've also got some great products there. They've got Security Manager and things like that. I have two requests of you. Two humble requests for you listeners and viewers. Number one, go out, find one of their products. They all have free trials, so you can try it, see if I'm not blowing smoke here. Their products really are that great, so give that a shot. But the other thing is when you sign up for it, it gets you on their mailing list. And not only have they been putting out great products, they've been putting out some pretty great white papers also about security and planning and governance and things like that. And even if you don't end up buying the product, which you probably will after you try it out, look at their white papers. They've got some really great stuff there. I've really been impressed with the stuff they've been cranking out. It's a great company. I mentioned I was over there in December and hung out with those guys for a couple of days. Everybody there was great. The office is very exciting, very energetic. So give those guys a listen, give them a read, download their stuff, try their products out. Go to siskit.com. All right, for topics, normally I make Shane come up with all the topics, but since he's not on this week, it is all stuff that I care about. And the first one that I wanted to talk about was an article I ran across a few days ago called Azure AD Connect for Red Teamers. So for those of you who aren't in the security world, the Red Team is the team that you have inside your company that tries to penetrate your security things or whatever. It's a testing thing. And this is an article about some of the vulnerabilities, sort of, that this guy, Adam Chester, found in Azure AD Connect that his Red Team folks were able to exploit. Now, a couple of things about this. Don't be scared about this. Well, first off, Azure AD Connect is the software that you use to sync your Windows Active Directory to Azure Active Directory. These are not issues with Azure AD itself. These are only issues that Adam has with the Connect software, the sync software. Number two, before you freak out and go, oh my God, I just heard that Azure AD Connect is unsecured. We have to scrap all this and we're just going to keep our users on notepads, filing cards and all that kind of stuff. That is not the case. For everything that Adam found in his article, and it's a very interesting article. I really liked it. But everything that he found had a prerequisite that the Red Team user had local administrator rights on the Azure AD Connect box and was able to log into it. So had access to it and was a local administrator. If you talk to any security expert, they pretty much say that if you're a bad guy, once you get physical access to a box, or in this case, login access, the game's over. Not only do you need that, but you need to be a local administrator. So don't freak out. The software is not inherently insecure. You still need a really high elevated set of permissions to do any of these things. So keep that in mind. But what Adam has done is he was able to penetrate one of these boxes, grab administrator rights on one of these boxes through other means, and then he kind of went through and found the things that he did not like about how Azure AD Connect is set up. And really what these are a list of things that the software could do better to be more secure. It's not insecure, but things that it could do to be more secure. And he found some places where he was able to sniff passwords as they were synced. He found a place where he was able to extract an encryption key from a SQL database where Azure AD Connect stores these things. So for you as the listener of this podcast and somebody who's running Azure AD Connect, this is not to freak you out. There's nothing to freak out about. There's really not even any things that you can do because these are all parts of the code. I mean, he's decompiling DLLs and things like that. Nothing that you can fix. But what it is good for you to know is to know where these vulnerabilities are at so that when your security folks do audits of this, they're not surprising you with them. Or you can provide them with these things ahead of time. But to know where the vulnerabilities are at. And again, just to hammer home, your Azure AD Connect box has to be super secure. Don't be running it on somebody's desktop machine or a box that a bunch of people can log into. This should be a dedicated box with tight permissions for all of the reasons that Adam has in his blog post. So good article, read through it. And it also lets you understand a little bit better about how Azure AD Connect works. I really like that because it got into the bowels of the software, and I really enjoyed that one. So go out, if you're running Azure AD Connect, go out and take a look at that one. I got some good news earlier this week, and let me get the link up here so I make sure that I quote it correctly. Two of my favorite things in the world. One of them is PowerShell. I've had a big crush on PowerShell for coming up on 10 years now since the first beta of SharePoint 2010 came out. Been really loving PowerShell, and since I've started going to work for Simpraxis, I've been doing a lot of PowerShell, which is great. Wasn't necessarily what I thought I would be doing, but now that they've got somebody who can sling PowerShell, Mark and Julie and Derek have done a great job of saying, hey, there's this thing that we're doing. We're kind of cobbling it together, but can you make it look much better in PowerShell? And turns out I can. So I've been doing a lot of great things with PowerShell. Really enjoying that. Love me PowerShell. And then also, I love SharePoint, and I still love on-prem SharePoint. Don't get to indulge myself with it as much as I'd like to. Don't get to play with it like I'd like to, but I still do now and then. And kind of the marriage of those two things was the SharePoint PnP, or the Office 365 Patterns and Practices PowerShell, which is invaluable to me. Like I was doing a project for a customer, this week, but I've been doing it for a while, and they wanted a PowerShell script that did a bunch of things. And it didn't even occur to me that I should ask them if they were running the PnP PowerShell when I wrote the script, and the script used it, because that has just become so integral to me using PowerShell and SharePoint and all of that is just it. I use the PnP PowerShell. That's how I connect. That's how it all works. Turns out everybody's not apparently up to their elbows in PnP PowerShell like I am, but that's part of it. One of the things that has come up recently, I get excited about the PnP PowerShell, but it has only worked on-prem with SharePoint 2013 and SharePoint 2016. And so now I recently just saw this. They didn't give it a lot of fanfare. There wasn't a big parade or anything, but now there is a SharePoint 2019 module of the PnP PowerShell that you can grab. So if you go out to the SharePoint gallery, PowerShell gallery, you can now download that module. So I'll put a link in the show notes for that in the gallery. But you can also just go out to any modern PowerShell prompt, anyone that's like PowerShell 3 and later, and use the install module and type install module -name SharePoint PnP PowerShell 2019. So in the past, you could do SharePoint PnP PowerShell 2016, 2013, or online. They've now added a 2019 thing. That's been out there for a couple of weeks. So kudos to all the folks that do the PnP PowerShell. I've not had a chance to install this yet and play with it on my 2019 farm, but it's out there and I'm very excited about it. And the version of the PowerShell, the PnP that it shows up in is 3.6.1902. So the February build of this year's PnP PowerShell. So kudos to those folks. They're always knocking it out of the park, and I'm really looking forward to playing with that a little bit. Another thing, so as I'm going around looking at things that other people build that I use, that I love, a project that's been out for a while, and it's kind of been the extension of the AutoSP installer, has been something called the SharePoint DSC. Now, DSC is something that is part of PowerShell. It's not a SharePoint thing. It's the desired state configuration. And it's tools that have been built into PowerShell for several years now, where you set up rules about how something should look, how a box should look, what software it should have installed or whatever. And then you make this DSC template and you can apply it to a box over and over again, and it gives you this desired state. So some folks in the SharePoint community have got a SharePoint DSC. So basically what this is you run this against your SharePoint on-prem farm, and it creates this DSC, this desired state configuration file from your farm, and then you can use it to install other farms and basically replicate them. So this is a GitHub project. It's pretty great. You can go to github.com/PowerShell SharePoint DSC and take a look at that. I haven't done a lot of big farms on-prem recently. Like that's sort of those folks, the folks that have had to keep a lot of farms going, either now see SharePoint Online and Office 365 as a way to not have to have all that overhead, so they've moved out, or they've embraced it all and they have great teams of people that run it all, so they don't bring guys like me in so much because they've got people that can handle it all. So I haven't got to do a lot with that lately, but DSC is a great tool. And there's a lot of small demos. Again, this is a PowerShell thing, so you can kind of play with PowerShell a little bit and play with DSC on a small scale with like individual machine things before you jump out and try the SharePoint DSC, which is out there. In the chat room, Mark Chrisman is asking about the PnP PowerShell and saying now that the 2019 version is gone, or is out, does that mean that they're going to take away the 2013 version? I don't think so. I've not asked them specifically about that. I haven't checked the stats lately on my builds page, which is kind of how I decide what versions of SharePoint people are using, by looking at the hits on my 2010, 2013, 2016, and 2019 builds pages. And 2013 is still getting a fair chunk of hits. So I think it's still out there in the wild a lot. I think there's a lot of demand. I think you can go to the gallery though and see how many versions or how many downloads the SharePoint 29 or the 2010, 2013 build of the PnP has got, and you can kind of see what. Yeah, so it's got hundreds of downloads for the SharePoint 2013 PnP. 2016's got more and all of that. So that's good. But yeah, I think it'll be around for a while. But if I hear anything, I will update you guys. And this is another interesting thing. So Brett Cartwright is saying that he's doing some Microsoft engagements, and they're using DSC to help build their farms out. So that's good. That's a good thing. And that's one of those things where, like, I'm a nuts and bolts guy. I like playing with technology. I like installing SharePoint. I like configuring farms. It's peaceful for me. It's some people like to garden. I like to install SharePoint. So on one hand, I don't use these tools often because I enjoy doing the thing that they replace. But on the other hand, I get that I'm a little weird in that aspect. And so I can understand why people would use these automation things if they have to do a lot of them. So it's a good tool to have out there. So kudos to those guys. If I had more free time and all that, I would play with that a little more and give you guys more of an overview of it. But I don't use it much. I don't have a lot of business that would benefit from that. Speaking of GitHub projects and all of that, just before when we were doing the pre-show, chatting in the chat room and all that, Brett Cartwright gave out another great GitHub project, the Windows 10 debloater. So I will put a link to that in the show notes as well. This is something I'm going to cover here in a minute. I've been installing Windows 10 on a few new boxes lately and playing with some new Windows 10 builds. And there's some bloat there. There's some cruft. Not nearly as bad as it used to be. Like I feel like in the Windows 95, 98 time frame, we really hit some heavy bloat with, Dell adding a bunch of things and people having Microsoft install things, AOL, that kind of thing. I think the bloat was really bad. I feel like bloat is not as bad now as it used to be with third-party things, but now the OS has a lot of things built into it, a lot of games and things that I don't care about for what I'm doing. The average user, my mom, probably loves these things. Mark Chrisman in the chat room is saying that he does want to keep Candy Crush. I don't blame you. If I could be a professional Candy Crush player, I would probably give all this up and do that for a living. Candy Crush is a lot of fun. But for some folks, they want to get rid of all those things. So the Windows 10 debloater is a GitHub project that is a PowerShell script. So you can see all the things. You can open the kimono. You can see behind the curtain, you can see all the things that it does. And it also tells you, it's all pretty upfront, with all the things that it does. And it removes a bunch of packages from Windows. It removes a bunch of scheduled tasks that are running in the background. A bunch of the things like the Twitter client, the Pandora client, the Flipboard client. It removes all of those things and just gives you a trimmed down version of Windows 10. Since I just heard about this thing, 35 minutes ago, I've not run it on anything. Brett says he's used it a couple of times and he swears by it. So if you've got Windows 10 installs, you might want to take a look at this. And Brett brings up an interesting thing in the chat room. That is, since it's a PowerShell script, if there's something that it takes out, like your beloved Candy Crush, and you don't want it to, it's just a PowerShell script. You can just remove it. You can just comment it out and run the script and take advantage of all the other great things. So I like this kind of stuff. This is good. This is one of those things where there have been a lot of these kind of projects in the past, and while I probably won't run them exactly the way they are in GitHub, since it is just a script and I can get the code, it is the thing that I base the thing that I use on. So I would download this, I would go through, I would do like Brett does, I would comment out the things for the stuff I want to keep. I have a script that I run on Windows servers that sets a bunch of settings that I like it takes the taskbar and makes the icons full size unless the taskbar is full, a bunch of things like that. And so then I would add my code into this. So this would be, the basis for the thing that I ended up running myself. And that's, so these are very good things to take a look at. Iterate on somebody else's hard work. And thanks to Brett for mentioning this in the chat room. It's funny because I already had a thing in my notes about this and Brett's thing kind of bring it on. I was talking to Mark yesterday and we were working through some things and he's like, oh, that's out on GitHub, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm going to be honest with you, Mark, GitHub just scares the pants off of me. I've got a GitHub account. If you go out to github.com/Todd Clint, you can see it out there. There is zero things of value out there. So don't even worry about firing a browser up and doing that. But I've played with GitHub. I use GitHub to download other things. A lot of the things that I use on some of the Raspberry Pi stuff I use and the PowerShell, all those things are in GitHub. It is a great repository for software and a great way to manage that. I myself just don't use it a whole lot. So Mark kind of went through and talked me through the things and brought up the way things work. He works in code, whereas I would probably start out using PowerShell because I'm not a coder. But after I got off the call with him, I went and I downloaded the GitHub desktop client, which is a free, github.com, the Windows 10 desktop client. Synced that up to one of my repositories, made some changes to my PowerShell, and I think I can see how I would use this. I can see how I would work this into my regular PowerShell development. I've got a few PowerShell projects in the works now. I probably won't move those over right now, but I think I will probably start a new one soon and try to do it all in GitHub. The reason that I bring this up in this crowd is I'm guessing if you listen to this podcast, you are also not a great GitHub user, and it's kind of scary and very confusing. Pulls and pushes seem like they go the wrong direction, don't know the difference between a fork and a clone, that kind of stuff. My advice to you would be to talk to somebody who knows how to do it. Heck, even shoot me a tweet or something and figure it out, because once you get past a couple of those little terminology hurdles and walk it through, Mark did a tremendous job walking me through it. I can see how I would use it. And Mark Chrisman, he's in here. He's been using it for his PowerShell development. So I'm preaching to the choir. I'm glad to see that Mark's a little bit ahead of me on that. So this works into another one of my goals. I want to make some of my other code more available. I write a lot of PowerShell functions and scripts and things like that. I want to make those easier to distribute for people, easier to update and those kind of things. So I think I'll probably start doing that. And with Microsoft buying GitHub a while back, they've done this thing where you can not pay for GitHub and have private and public repos and have some more control over that. So I like doing that. So hopefully, and you guys hold my feet to the fire, keep me honest about this. I will hopefully be putting some of my stuff out there and you guys can consume it. If I don't, yell at me. In a month or 2 months, if I haven't put anything out there on GitHub, I'm looking at you guys in the chat room and you listeners to send me a tweet and say, hey, what happened? I keep going to your GitHub and there's nothing there. Hopefully I will be able to update some of that and make some good use of GitHub, because it does seem very, very valuable for the things that I do in PowerShell. All right, I mentioned that I've been playing with some new Windows 10 builds recently, and that's why the debloater was of interest to me. So I've done some installs, and I do that here and there for individual things, but I've actually bought another tablet. And I think I talked about that a couple of weeks ago, that I bought a new tablet, and I kind of want to talk about the genesis of that. So I travel a lot, and while I have a laptop that I use, it's a 15-inch HP Spectre X360 or something, I forget. Great tablet, use it a lot. It's got a touch screen, it's got all the things, but it's just not great for on planes, and it's because it's bigger, it doesn't always fit, And so if I'm, not in first class or whatever, it just doesn't make a lot of space. And sometimes I don't want to work when I'm on a plane. I never trust the in-plane entertainment systems to work. There's just too many stories about them going down. So I always bring something with me for entertainment. And in the past, that has been this. This is a 10-inch Insignia Windows 10 tablet, whatever. I got this like a year ago. It was $100 at Best Buy. It was kind of on sale, but it's got a full keyboard and all of that. But it's also just a tablet, and so I can pull it out, and I've got a little Amazon tablet stand that I can put it on, so I can use this to watch movies, TV shows, whatever. If I want to get on the in-plane Wi-Fi, I can hook the keyboard back up and type some emails and do some chats and all that kind of stuff. And it works pretty well for that. Absolutely got my $100 out of it, but it's a little slow, and I forget what all the specs are on it. The biggest one that kills me is it's got 2 gigabytes of RAM. So while it's got a small screen and I don't normally run multiple things at once, it's also a little slow. So I end up doing a thing like I'll click a web page, and if I'm on a plane, the internet's horrible, and then I'll flip over to something else while that web page loads. This thing doesn't do very many things at once. But overall, it was a good purchase, and it let me know I kept wanting this to perform better, which told me that there was probably a use case for a device like this. So this was kind of the thing that I was looking for. Now, another thing that has happened in Todd's technology world is a year or so ago, I got a Google Fi account. Google Fi is Google's phone service. It is mostly Android based, though they've changed that a while back, but it is Google Fi. I'm not going to try to sell you on Google Fi, but it uses some GSM bands, so you have SIMs. But one of the great things that Google Fi lets you have is it lets you have a data-only SIM for free. So I pay, $20 a month for my phone number and however much data I use. I can get a data-only SIM, and it doesn't cost me any more. But any data that I use on that data-only SIM counts against my phone number, which is fine. I don't care about that. So I got a data-only SIM, and I've got a hotspot that I use it in, and that works pretty well. But then I got to thinking, I can get a bunch of these data-only SIMs for free. I think my next laptop or tablet is going to have a SIM slot, going to have an LTE support, so I can try these data-only SIMs. So that was kind of the next thing that I wanted. I wanted a 10-inch-ish tablet and something that supported these SIMs that I can get for free with Google Fi. So what I ended up getting, and I think I talked about it last week, but I got it last week and talked about it, was a Surface Go. So I don't know how well this, let me look at my local video here. I've lost XSplit. Where'd XSplit go? Okay, so you kind of can see here. So this is a Surface Go. It is a 10-inch tablet, which is very shy and won't turn on right now. 10-inch tablet with all the Surface-y things that you're used to. It's got the Surface keyboard and those kind of things. There's the screen. You can kind of see it here. So it's got the kickstand in the back with the variable degrees of kickstandedness. It's got the detachable keyboard that you're used to from Surfaces, the type pad, I think. And then it's just a regular tablet without it. But it has been a great little device. So it scratches all of the itches that the little Insignia did. It's the right size, decent battery. I haven't really gotten to put the battery through the paces, but many hours, 6-7 hours of watching video, things like that. I don't need my Amazon stand because it's got the stand in the back, which is good. It's got a couple of things that I find not negotiable with new things that not negotiable, but things that I really wanted. Number one, while it uses the proprietary Surface charger, so if you've got a newer Surface device, you're used to that. It's the charger's got a little edge connector on it. It uses that, but the Surface Go also has USB-C. Now, USB-C is a very complicated interface. It does a lot of things. This one, the USB-C is for hooking up peripherals, hubs, whatever. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But you can also use it to charge the device. So my phones, I've got a bunch of tablets and phones and all that kind of stuff. My laptop, my main laptop charges with USB-C. So I've got a lot of USB-C charging apparatus around me. So I tried to charge this with a regular USB cable. So just plugging it into any USB wall wart and plugging it in. It did charge, but it charged at the lowest common denominator of USB charging, 5 volts, half an amp, which turned out to be just a little less than the tablet was using to do the thing that I had going at the time. So I couldn't even keep up. It was just going to kind of slowly work itself to zero. That didn't work. So my main phone is a Samsung Galaxy S8. It also charges with USB-C, and it has a charger that works a little better. So I tried that charger with the Surface Go. It didn't charge at all. Didn't even recognize there was a charger attached. So I got a little confused. I was thinking that should work better. Then I tried my laptop charger, which is USB-C, plugged that in, poof, started charging. So I did some research. USB-C has a bunch of different profiles. It will always charge with the regular USB charging. So the 5 volts, half an amp, that's the thing I plugged in. Above and beyond that, USB-C has to support a PD or a power distribution profile, and there are several of those. And the highest one is like 19 or 20 volts at, I remember, an amp, something like that. So what had happened was my Samsung charger that I hooked up to my phone was also using the PD, the power distribution profile, but it had a profile that the tablet did not recognize. The laptop one did. So that's why I was able to charge it. So now I'm able to charge my Surface Go with USB-C, with all the stuff that I've got. My charging bricks and all that kind of stuff. I don't need to take the Surface Edge charger with me. And the great deal is then I can use that same charger for phone, laptop, whatever. I need to figure out what the power distribution profiles are that I need. I'm looking at getting another charger for that. So it's got that. The other thing, it's got an SD slot for me to load my movies, my TV shows on and all of that in the back. But then it also has my beloved LTE slot. And you can see they did the thing where they hide the SD card thing behind the leg. So that's my SD card. And then the SIM slot sticks out right there. So the other thing is there are several levels of Surface Go devices. To get the one that had the LTE slot, it also has 8 gigabytes of RAM and I think a 256 gig drive in it. It was not cheap. Brett in the chat room is asking if it's $100 like the Insignia was. It was not $100. It was just a touch more. And then you also have to buy the keyboard separately, so I bought that. So it ended up being $700-800, something like that. It's not cheap, but it did all the things that I wanted it to do. So I've been playing with that a little bit. And then figuring out what my peripheral game looks like. I've got USBC hubs that I've had in the past. So this is one of my favorites. I use this on my laptop all the time. It gives me some USB type A slots, and then it gives me an Ethernet port, which is great. But one of the things that the Insignia has that the Surface Go does not is an external video port. This is important. I go out, I present a lot, I talk at a lot of different user groups and things like that, and being able to take the Surface Go and just have it in my bag and then hook up to their projector would be great, but this didn't have anything built in. But USB-C to the rescue. USB-C does have a video profile to it. So I went out after talking to some folks some friends of mine on Twitter, Sean McDonough specifically, went out to Amazon and bought a new USB-C hub. So this is USB-C male. And it's got several things. So it's got my Type A, my USB Type A thing, so I can plug my presenter mouse in, all those kind of things. It's got Ethernet, so if I'm at a spot where I've got Ethernet, I can do that. But it's also got this edge right here. So I've got full-size HDMI, which is great, which will get me connected to projectors and televisions in hotel rooms, things like that. But then it also has a USB-C jack here that does power distribution. So now I can plug this thing into the Surface Go, have my clicker, my Logitech clicker clicked up so I can go through my slides, have HDMI hooked up so I can project to a projector, and plug into my charger, and it will pass through and keep my tablet charged while I'm doing all that. So I like this little thing. This was $50-ish on Amazon. I'll put a link in the show notes on this. Used it a couple times here at home, just testing it. Worked exactly the way I would expect with the Surface Go. Just plugged it in, everything just worked. Just lit right up. I plugged it into a TV and a monitor. All that worked. The Ethernet worked. Hooked up a wireless mouse and all that. Everything worked. The charger worked. I plugged my laptop charger in. Zoom. Pow. Great little guy. Fits great in my little purse of cables. So I was playing with this and just trying every combination of things that I could think of. And all the while, my phone is in my pocket. So again, I've got a Galaxy S8. So they are one, soon to be 2 versions behind on this. It also has a USB-C port. That's how it charges, all those things. But I thought, I wonder what happens when I plug this into my phone. So it was a very weird thing. So I plugged this hub into my phone, and I still had everything plugged in from the Go. So I still had my keyboard and mouse. I still had Ethernet. I still had HDMI. I still had the charger. Everything worked. So I hooked this up, and immediately my phone screen popped up on my television. So I turned my phone landscape so that it would match the resolution or the aspect ratio of the television. That all worked. My mouse and keyboard worked in Android, so I could use my mouse to move around in Android and click things. It charged, so it was continuing to charge with the laptop charger, and it was using my Ethernet connection to get out to the internet. And so I went out to YouTube and fired up some videos on my phone through the TV, worked like a champ. So that was great. Now that only works because the Galaxy S8 supports all of those USB-C profiles. My Google Fi phone, which is this Motorola G6, does not support all of those. Specifically, it doesn't support the video out one. So I wasn't able to get that working, but it does support the charging and all that. So if you have a newish phone that has USB-C or any USB-C devices, Chromebooks, tablets, whatever, a little hub like this that has all of the things on it might work for you. So again, I'll put the thing in the show notes for that. Been very helpful. So now I just imagine I'm going to have very few peripherals in my bag, and that will be good. So then the next thing I need VGA out, and I have because some projectors are still VGA. So I have an adapter in my bag that goes from HDMI to VGA. So I've not tried it yet, but after the show, I'm going to try hooking that up to here and see if that works on VGA. And then I'll have all the things that I need. So I will continue to take my laptop with me everywhere because the screen's bigger and it's faster and all those kind of things. But this little device here, and Mark linked it up in the chat room, and I'll put a note in the show notes. Pretty able little device. I've not had any frustrations with it being slow like I did with the Insignia. It's been a good little device. And I've taken it out a couple of times just to try the LTE out. Right now I've got an AT&T data sim in it, and I'm in the middle of nowhere, Iowa. I'm in Ames, Iowa. And when I run the Windows 10 speed test, I get 30, 40 megabits down with the AT&T stuff. So I have no concerns when I travel that will be a problem. So I'll probably do some kind of official YouTube a review of this and just kind of show off the stuff, but I thought I would mention it to you folks as well. And if you've got any questions about it, give me a shout, whatever. But good little device, been happy with it so far. Speaking of people being happy, I just got back from SP TechCon a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things I got to do was hang out with my friend Ruth Shire. She was there, and she put out a blog post entitled "Why I Attended SP TechCon Austin 2019." Now, this is a good thing because people ask me a lot, which conferences should I go to? Should I go to this conference? Should I go to that conference? I can't speak badly about any of the conferences that I go to, not because I'm a toady and won't do that, but because I just don't go to any bad conferences. But I also recognize that my conference experience is a little different than the people that are asking me. Number one, I'm a speaker, so there's just a different level of expectations and preparation and all that. And number two, I don't go to many sessions when I'm there. Like, I just have a different experience. So I tell people these things and I give them those caveats. But what I don't often have is somebody who is like them, somebody who's looking for the same things to point them at. And so Ruth Shire's blog post is a good one with that. She was an attendee. She went to sessions and all that. And so she talked about all the things that she liked, which is great because that's the kind of things that other attendees will go to. But the other great thing that Ruth did in her blog post was she called out a bunch of the people, the speakers and all that she liked, and gave them some, links to their blogs and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. So that will help you figure out, if I'm going to a conference, Ruth saw this person, they saw Vlad present a thing. I wonder what Vlad's got going on. Well, here's Vlad's blog and Twitter, those kind of things. So really great job on that blog post by Ruth. I appreciate that. And you can get to that at summit-consulting.net. Again, links in the show note. So shout out to Ruth for writing that up. It was very nice. I was happy to make it in the list of the excellent speakers that she enjoyed. And more importantly, I was above Shane in the list of speakers that she enjoyed. So as long as I get top billing over Shane, like everything else is just kind of gravy. But go check that out. And finally, Shane and I talk a lot about the podcasts that we listen to. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm in a phase of my entertainment right now where I listen to a fair amount of music, but if I'm driving someplace, road tripping, I like to have my mind engaged usually, so I will listen to podcasts. I listen to a lot of those. Ironically, or maybe unexpectedly, I don't listen to a lot of tech podcasts. I listen to a few, but not a lot. Not because I don't like tech podcasts. A lot of my friends do them. Honestly, as a tech podcaster, I'm afraid that I'm going to end up stealing somebody's content by accident. So I tend to avoid the tech podcasts, at least in my area, for that reason. But there's some great ones out there. Andrew Connell's got a great one. Daniel Glenn's got a great one. There's just a bunch of them out there. But I end up listening to other types of podcasts. I end up listening to a lot of language podcasts, a lot of stuff like TED Talks and This American Life and that kind of stuff. But for whatever reason, I find myself also listening to a lot of economics podcasts and money podcasts and finance podcasts. And one of them that has been in my list forever, I mean, I've been listening to this podcast for more years than I can think of, is Slate Money. I've really enjoyed that podcast. It's economics only. It's, crazy economics things in European. One of the hosts is from Europe, so he has a take on that. But it's a really great one. And I've fallen a little behind, but I noticed that they started a new series of podcasts. One of the people that when I started listening to him, one of the people on the podcast, Kathy O'Neill, had moved off and done some other things, but she had come back and she's doing a series of podcasts with Felix on travel. And I find this interesting because they're kind of hitting travel from an economic standpoint, sort of. Really, it's two old friends sitting around talking about travel, which is fun because Felix and Kathy are fun to listen to. But it's interesting because they're seeing it from my side. So Kathy wrote a book called Weapons of Math Destruction recently about algorithms and how they're changing the way that we live. And because of that, she's gotten some notoriety. She's done a TED Talk. She's been asked to speak at conferences and speak at Davos and all that kind of thing. And so now she's doing the kind of travel that I do. So it was a very kindred spirit as I was listening to this. But she's doing these podcasts on, things that she doesn't like with travel, ways to make travel better and all of that. So I thought I would share that with you guys. A lot of the people that I see in the chat room and listen to this are people who travel for work, and that's what this is. And it's good to see. It's good to see people having the same problems, but it's also interesting because Kathy's like, I won't fly anywhere overnight unless they can put me in business class or first class because I have to sleep. And she was talking about how she turned down a speaking gig because the accommodations weren't good. And she's like, it's so taxing when you travel for work. And if I don't have these kind of things, I just won't take the gig. And she's like, but I also recognize how horrible that sounds and how ashamed I am of myself that this is the thing that makes me turn it down because the hotel's not nice enough or the flights aren't nice enough. And it was good to hear that because I have the same issues myself. If somebody asked me to travel somewhere to speak at something, the travel accommodations they figure in. It's not necessarily about whether I get paid or what the audience is, but if I'm going to be miserable getting there and miserable getting back, that figures in. So if you're somebody who travels and you like the economic stuff, the Slate Money podcasts are fun ones to listen to, and I put a link in the show notes for those. That is all of the content that I have this week. We will go on now to the shameless self-promotion and all of that. Here in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be going down to Kansas City to speak at the SharePoint user group down there, Office 365 user group. That's Monday, March 11th. If you're in the Kansas City area, you should sweep in and listen to that. I'm going to be talking about groups and hub sites and all those kind of new things in Office 365 that we need to wrap our heads around. Shane right now is doing some Power Apps and Flow training, which is why he is not here with us. He'd rather hang out with those guys than us. That same week that I go to Kansas City, I'll be coming home for a couple of days and then heading back south again to the North American Collaboration Summit. That's Mark Rackley's fantastic conference down in Branson, Missouri. Shane and I are going to both be there doing various things. I know Shane's doing an all-day flow and apps thing. I'm doing some other things. That's March 14th and 15th down there. Just great stuff. You gotta go down to that one. Mark does an amazing job with that. Then Shane's doing a Power Apps thing March 29th, I believe, in Omaha. But I think I saw something last night that the SharePoint Saturday event has been moved. So I need to talk to Dave Peterson about that and find out about that. And then after that, on April 1st, I'm going to be at the SharePoint Exchange Forum in Stockholm, Sweden, SEF 2019. I cannot wait to go there. Every time I go to Stockholm, every time I go to Sweden, it is just an amazing time. I look forward to that. I didn't get to go last year. I got a little whiny. I missed it. I like my trips to Sweden. It's a great place. And the conference is great. The people are great. So I'll be there April 1st and the 2nd. And then Shane and I, May 21st, we're going to be at the SharePoint conference in Las Vegas. You can't miss that one. That is the SharePoint event to go to. You can go to SharePoint. I forget what the URL is, sharepointna.com, and get all signed up for that. It is going to be great. Everybody's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Shane's going to be there. I think Lori's going to be there maybe. We're trying to get that working. So that will be great. And if you're going to be at any of these conferences, if you're going to be in Kansas City or whatever, for goodness sakes, come up and introduce yourself to me. Let me know that you listen to the podcast. Let me know what you like. Let me know what you don't like, especially if the thing you don't like is Shane. That would be awesome to hear. I'm a really friendly guy, so happy to chat with you however long about whatever if you're at one of these events. Would love to hear from you. So chat room, I will stick around for a while. For the rest of you, I bid you a fair adieu. You can always reach me on Twitter at Todd Clint. You can email me, todd@toddclint.com. Would love to hear from you if you've got something to say. Go out to the YouTube channel, YouTube/Todd Clint Netcast. And hopefully, I think we'll have Shane back next week, and we will see you next week. Later.